Hi everyone, my name is Carl. Thanks for coming to my channel, Project Objective. Today's video, which is my very first video on this channel, is on the topic of mail-in voting in the United States and whether or not fraud is an issue. Before we get started on the video, I would just like to explain my intent with Project Objective. I created this channel so I could discuss the many topics that people tend not to be objective about. Things like politics, religion, science, etc. These are topics where far too many people tend to deny objective reality in lieu of alternative facts. I believe truth does not fear honest criticism, and ignorance must always be reasonably challenged. This channel, and the videos I hope to make, are my way of pushing back against anti-intellectualism and pseudo-intellectualism in the hopes of adding just a little bit of logic and reason to the world. That being said, let's talk about the nonsense that is mail-in voting in the United States and the potential for voter fraud. To start this video off, I want to read to you a tweet from the President of the United States of America. With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment for the USA. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. And he did end that with question marks. So first, I want to respond with 3 facts about mail-in voting in general. 1, mail-in voting has existed since the Civil War. That's 150 plus years. 2, in the last 2 federal elections alone, nearly 25% of ballots were cast by mail. 3, polling shows that 70% of the population supports mail-in voting. Now that we got that out of the way, let's focus on the universal mail-in voting versus the absentee voting. Despite what our president would have you believe, these are exactly the same thing. There's only one subtle difference. In a state that has universal mail-in voting, you get your ballot in the mail automatically. Now, in states that don't have universal mail-in voting and they have your traditional mail-in voting, which most people call absentee, you simply have to request that. The vetting process for any type of mail-in voting is exactly the same. Currently, there are 5 states that have universal mail-in voting. So again, without requesting it, they will automatically send you a ballot that you can just simply mail in. 29 states allow for requesting mail-in ballots for any reason. They do not care what the reason is, they will automatically send it to you. Only 16 states require specific reasons, 11 of which will accept COVID-19 as a reason. That means there are 45 states where you can easily vote by mail without any issues. So in case you still aren't following, mail-in voting is already a thing in this country. It's not some Democratic plot, as our dear leader would have you believe, to fraudulently take the election from him. Voting is a right. The process needs to be easily understood, easily accessible, and done in a way that's not risky to the people involved. So here are some things to consider about Election Day. If we were to have everybody voting in person, we would have hundreds of people cycling in and out of a very tight space where proper social distancing will be virtually impossible. These people will be dealing with touchscreens, pens, paper, etc., things that will be virtually impossible to properly sanitize under the circumstances. Polling places are typically communal buildings, such as schools and nursing homes, which house 2 of our most vulnerable groups. Under normal circumstances, a voter would interface with 20 people, but a worker would actually interface on average with over 700. Under current circumstances, we are going to have far fewer locations to vote and far fewer election workers because of the virus. So that is only going to exacerbate all of this. We clearly need to encourage and make it easy for people to vote by mail. Now, I know some of you might be like, okay, fine, Carl, you've made a point. I understand everything you've said, but what about what Trumplethinskin said? What about fraud? Well, guess what? Fraud is a non-issue. In the 2016 election, Oregon, one of the universal mail-in voting states, had over 2 million mail-in votes. Only 54 of them were suspected of fraud. That is less than 0.0002%. All the data shows that mail-in voter fraud is simply not an issue. Even Trumplethinskin's own task force disbanded without ever submitting a report of voter fraud. The Heritage Foundation, a far-right leaning think tank, has been investigating voter fraud for years and to date has found less than 1,300 definitive cases of voter fraud. I believe that Trumplethinskin is pushing the fraud narrative despite all of the facts because he wants an excuse if he loses. If you still can't see that about Trumplethinskin, I don't know what to tell you. But I sincerely hope that you'll look at the information that I've given you in this video and you will see that mail-in voting is not an issue. Thanks for watching.